Welcome to Kathy's Eclectic Garden. I'm Kathy and I garden in Zone 6A in Northwest Ohio. So you want to grow some flowers, but you have a problem. You don't think you have anywhere to grow them. Let's look at some solutions. We'll be right back. About 34 years ago, we planted a small evergreen bush in this area, and it grew to be 4 to 5 feet diameter and 3 to 4 feet tall. It didn't attract any pollinators, except in the fall we would get funnel spiders that would take up residence. We decided we'd pull it out because we were just tired of it. It had gotten too big for this area. So after we got that bush pulled out and we had this area cleaned out, we had about probably about a 5 by 4 foot area or a 5 by 6 foot area. And I wanted to plant a 9-bark. I've got a 9-bark in another area in my garden that's a full-size 9-bark that gets quite large. But I wanted something smaller than that. And Proven Winners has a tiny wine dwarf 9-bark. And that's what I purchased and planted. And this plant likes full sun. It's a native species. This would be a native R. It's disease resistant. It has pretty little pink flowers in spring, and it's covered with bees, little tiny specialist bees when it's in flower. And it gets 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. So I thought that would be perfect for this area. I thought I was just going to plant a 9-bark in this area. And then I realized I had a hydrangea that needed to be relocated because it wasn't doing well where it was planted before. So I moved this Invincible Spirit 2 up into this garden because I had an empty space that needed something planted. So this is an Invincible Spirit 2. It's a Proven Winners hydrangea. It's an arborescens, so it's also a native. And it gets about 4 feet tall and wide. So now I've got a 9-bark and a hydrangea, and I decided, okay, maybe I need to plant some ground cover in here so I'm not fighting weeds all the time. I have become a big fan of Purple Chablis dead nettle. It's a Lamium maculatum. It's a Proven Winners variety. It's not native, but it's a great little ground cover. It grows rapidly and it covers a good area. It doesn't take over. It gets 8 to 12 inches high. It's hardy in zones 4A to 8B. It likes sun to shade, so you can plant it just about anywhere. It's going to be in the sun most of the time in this garden. And you don't have to deadhead it. It has these purple little flowers that come and go, and I love it. It's a nice little plant. So I think, okay, I'm done now. This is what my garden's going to look like. But wait a minute, I made a trip to the nursery to get one thing, and they had the most beautiful daylilies, and I had to have them. So I bought 2, and I got them home, and I looked at my husband, and I said, okay, now what am I going to do with these? And he goes, well, plant them in the new little garden. So that's what I did. I planted them up in the front. That'll be some spring color, and that's where I put them. Thought I was done. No, not yet. Then we made a trip to Lowe's, and my husband decided we need some red in that garden. So I bought a Sassy Summer Sangria Yaro. That's also a full sun plant. It's hardy in zones 3 to 8, and it blooms in early to late summer. And I've already deadheaded this once, and it's still blooming like crazy. I love it. It's a beautiful yarrow, and it will get probably 3.5 feet tall and wide. And I promise this is the last plant I've planted in this garden. This is the coup de grace. My husband saw this at Lowe's and thought it would be a bright splash of color for this little garden. And I love it. This is Moonbeam Coreopsis, or Coreopsis verticulata. And it blooms in spring, summer, and fall. It's a mounding perennial. It's hardy in zones 3 and higher. And I think he took pictures of the day that I planted it, and then he took pictures 9 days later, and you can see how fast it grew. And this little plant has been covered in flowers ever since we planted it, and that would have been, I believe that was in early June, and it just keeps flowering and flowering, and there's 2 plants there, and I love it. It's a great little pollinator plant. After I got everything planted, I didn't want to have to be fighting weeds all the time, and the ground cover will help with that once it gets established. But for starters, I put down newspaper and wet it real good to help control the weeds, and then I covered it with land and sea compost. Also, our neighbor cut down a tree, and we took a lot of the logs that were left over from it because I like to use wood and limbs and things, stumps, as hardscapes in my garden. And my husband took 3 of those and put around this bed, and I tell you, it just really set this garden off. This has become one of my favorites this year, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I am enjoying it. Now, if you watch my channel, you know this is a small garden for me. All of my other gardens are much bigger than this, but you might not even have a spot this big. But you can still grow flowers. You could even grow vegetables. Flowers can be grown in hanging baskets. You can grow vines vertically on trellises. You can grow flowers or vegetables in vertical planters such as a green stalk, and I'll put a link to the green stalk website. I've got several of them. If you just have an area around the edge of your house on the south side, or an area where they would get some sun, you could just put a strip of flowers along the edge of your foundation. So don't think because you have a small yard, or maybe you rent and you don't want to plant anything permanently in the ground. Get some big pots. You can get some big planters. You can pick them up at Walmart or Lowe's or Menards or Garden Center. And they've got some good plastic ones now that aren't real expensive. And planting those, you can even plant perennials in those. Don't think that because you're renting or you've got a small space, maybe you live in an apartment and all you've got's a little patio, you can still have some flowers. I hope you've enjoyed this video and are encouraged to plant some flowers and draw in some pollinators and beautify your living space. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.